So over here, folks, we want to invite you to this is where our panel's going to be talking, where our teaching will be, so kind of turn your chairs around a little if you need to, or else crane your neck. But in order to give us a context for conflict, I am inviting you to the day after Thanksgiving at the home of 3 siblings. And these 3 siblings have some issues, unlike your families, I'm sure. So, just so you know, they've had about 5 minutes to practice this. This is an improv, okay? This isn't like going to win any Academy Awards, I don't think. But see if you find yourself in any of these people. Go.
Anybody in for some leftovers?
No. Yeah, no. Okay, you guys, so I saw this ad the other day for puppies, and I was thinking that we should get one for Mom. Don't you think she would love that?
That's a great idea.
She was talking about it the other day to me on the phone, and I think that it would just be a really good, comfort for her right now. She's kind of had a hard time. I think that this puppy's so cute, and I feel like it would just be a really good idea. We should get a puppy.
I love it.
Okay, also look at this puppy. It's so cute.
He's so cute. Johnny, look at him.
Yeah.
Look at him.
Okay.
So we can pick up a crate or some food and then just drop him off at her house, and I think she could probably handle the training and stuff, and I think that this would be really just a great thing for her right now.
Okay. Well, idea. I mean, let's maybe think it through a little bit, because who's going to take care of the dog?
Well, Mom is. It's for Mom.
Okay, sure, but so Gavin, help me out here. We go over to Mom's 5 times a week just to check, make sure, hey, the laundry's out of the washer, not getting mildewy, going into the dryer, making sure, everything's getting done around the house.
Yeah.
There's no windows left open when it rains. She's doing great, for her age, but as far as this dog, it sounds like a lot of responsibility, and I'm just trying to honestly ask, who's actually going to be the one taking care of it?
He does have a point.
No, Mom wants a dog. Have you talked to her about this? Because she was talking to me about it the other day, and she said she wants a dog, and I just really feel like she could do well with a dog.
Okay, yeah, it's great that you want to swoop in and get this dog for Mom, but again, I'm just talking logistically, who's going to take care of it, because that's going to be us. And it's cool that you're coming in and trying to fix things, but there's no real quick fix.
No, you're just being a killjoy, and you're not listening to Mom and what she feels, and you're just upset because Dad never let you get a dog.
Okay. Guys, let's just get along here.
Okay, listen to Gavin. We're trying to get along and trying to get Mom along, and that's going to be kind of hard with a dog entering the equation too.
No,
and it's cool that
but
you
Gavin,
come in
I feel like a puppy would really just boost her mood. It would be fun to have around. You could take it for walks. It'd just be so cute.
Sure. That's a good point.
See, we should get a dog.
Okay, you always come in with these great ideas, but talking about how to kind of actually.
And you always ruin all the good ideas.
No,
so how
I'm
about
just
you
saying that this is going to cause a lot more stress than you realize.
Guys.
Can you tell we're real siblings?
Are you beginning to see yourselves anywhere, perhaps, or see some families? A little bit of conflict beginning to happen. So now Thanksgiving is past. They've all gone to their own homes, and some phone calls begin.
Gavin.
What's up?
Hey, so I was just thinking about this dog thing, and I want what's best for Mom. But you also know Michaela is going to be here next Christmas at the earliest, so she has no idea how much work this is going to be for us.
Yeah, I agree. You have a good point.
Thank you. And I really think that we should go to her and go to Mom and say, hey, listen, we can go to the dog park, we can take walks there once a week, but getting a dog for yourself, that's going to be a lot of work and probably not the best in this season of life.
I get it.
I mean, we're spending time with her. I know she's lonely after Dad, but we're doing the best we can, and this dog is just going to add to that.
All right, phone call number 2.
Hey, Gav. Okay, so I have been thinking about this dog, and I'm just about to put a deposit down, but I just really feel like I need you to be on my side, because Johnny's just not listening to reason. He's all about logistics, but the reality is it'll work itself out. It's just a dog. It's not that much responsibility, and Mom really can do it. He just always cares about how this is going to impact him, and he's not thinking about the bigger picture of Mom's feelings and how she's going to really adjust to having a dog. What do you say?
Yeah, you have a point. I mean, he's really cute.
Isn't
really
he?
Cute.
He's
I'll
so
take
cute.
care of him.
Okay.
I'll do my job.
All right, so you'll talk to Johnny?
Yeah, maybe.
So thank you. A little applause for our actors. Maybe on the chair. All right. So what did you observe? Real quick. What didn't go well? Throw something out. What was not handled well, maybe? Okay, not great communicating. We had, kind of the younger one wanting to make everybody happy, but it didn't care about the consequences. Older ones, all responsibility. What was the middle one here doing? Trying to stay out of trouble. Just, man, make everybody happy, stay out of what's going on. Yeah. So 3 months later, the daughter, she just bought the puppy anyway and brought it to mom without telling anybody, and everything went downhill from there. Just so you know, that's how it went. We're talking about conflict. Anybody been in a conflict ever? Okay, maybe on your way here, that could happen. Like, how come we're not on time? We're not going to get a seat, and maybe that's what happened. So I want to just talk you through a few biblical principles on conflict. We're going to do some table discussion. We're going to have a panel come up and talk about how they handle conflict as well. So the biblical goal in conflict, we're going to be in the book of Ephesians. I'll just give you a couple verses, all from chapter 4. Here's the goal that I think God puts out for conflict. It's Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15. Speaking the truth in love. We should just stop right there. Speaking the truth in love. We will in all things grow up into him who is the head, that is Christ. So the goal is growth. Growth for me, growth for you, growth for each of these three people, even growth for mom. And if that's the goal, how do you get there? Speaking the truth in love. Literally, it means truthing in love. Now, here's the deal. Each of us kind of have a leaning here. Even as balanced as you can be, you tend to lean toward what people call a truth teller. Like, they just need to know. And let's quit cutting around. Let's just, speak truth. Any truth tellers in the room? Okay. And those of you who are truth tellers, you're like, that's how other people ought to be. And then there's what we sometimes call the grace givers. Shouldn't we just all love one another and get along? And it doesn't matter who's right. Let's just be nice to each other. How many are the grace givers in the room? Okay. So the truth tellers are going to camp on another verse in chapter 4. And this is why you see that Paul says both are important, truthing and love. Later on in verse 25, he talks about truth. He says, therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we're members of one body. And falsehood takes many forms. It takes lying. It takes ignoring the problem. It takes this middle child just agreeing with everybody. Okay, that wasn't very truthful as well. And then the love people are going to camp on another verse, verse 29, but it's only part of the equation. It's the balance. Verse 29, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what's helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. And they're always thinking about, is this helpful? Is this even beneficial? Maybe we shouldn't be talking about this. Which one's right? They're all right when put together, and growth is the goal, speaking the truth in love. So truthing in love is this. Truth is the content, and love is the delivery system. Truth is the content, love is the delivery system. If you came to the office and had a meeting with me, I might go, do you want a cup of coffee? And you go, sure. Now coffee is the content. The delivery system could be all kinds of things. I might say, well, it's over there. Go get it. You could do that. I might bring it to you. I could say, here's your coffee, right in your face. There's a delivery system. Now, if you came to my house, my wife would be a little more considerate. She'd have a napkin and a plate and some creamer and some sugar and probably something to go with the coffee, Better delivery system. So some of us who are the truth tellers, as we call ourselves, is just like, there's your coffee. What's your problem? I don't care that your face is scalded. And the grace givers, let's see, have a nice seat, and here's some crumpets, and here's some napkin, and do you want it in a mug, or and there's actually no coffee in the cup at the end of the day. So what we need to understand is that truth without love is not truth. Truth without love is not truth. We can slam somebody with it, but truth is meant to bring change and life and transformation. And if you're just smacking somebody over the head, that's not biblical transformative truth. And love without truth is not love, because there's no opportunity for change. So the problem is that we all sin in conflict. We all sin in conflict. I want to walk through a couple of conflict styles. And by the way, we have a handout in the back if you want it. Don't know that we have enough for everybody. We'll have to print some more. You can send us, and we'll give you a link, and you can print your own. It's called your personal conflict style. This is where some of this is coming from. You take this little quiz, and it tells you what your personal conflict style is. And what I love about this quiz, it's kind of one of those, paper pencil inventories. This is the only one I've ever taken where you cannot look good no matter how hard you try. Because you're done, basically it shows you where you're most likely to sin in conflict. There's 4 conflict styles. All of them are sinful. And the goal isn't to become more like another one, like, well, I shouldn't sin this way, I'll sin that way. But it's super duper helpful. So on the one side are the people who overemphasize love at the expense of truth. We call them either passive or evasive. Passive or evasive. Passive responders, their primary need is to be loved. I just want to be loved. I want everybody to be loved. And they hold on to this unbalanced sense of love that really is selfish. Like, I can't handle the conflict. I feel like nobody loves me. And as a result, I really don't care about truth. I just care about how I feel. Okay? Their greatest fear for themselves and for other people is hurt. I just can't stand seeing people hurt, especially myself. What are they doing in surrender, in conflict? They just wave the white flag. They surrender. Okay? They roll over and go belly up. They'll surrender themselves, they'll surrender the relationships, and they'll surrender truth as long as there's no fighting. Some of the typical behavior for a passive person is silence. Just don't say anything. Walk away. Denial. That's good. All's good. I'm fine. Yep. I don't disagree with anybody. Inside, maybe they are. These are the people who go to like a work meeting or a church business meeting or something like that, and they don't say a word, and they watch everything, and then they get home and they go, nobody should have said like this, and somebody should have said this, but they didn't say a word, because they're not going to be the one that does it. Fear and doubt, sometimes they're overcome, but they could be the martyrs. They're the ones that'll just, poor me, always taken advantage of, but they never stand up for themselves. Also on that same side of love without truth are what we call evasive people. Very similar, but their need is to be accepted, and their biggest fear is being caught. They're the ones that are going to lie so as not to get in trouble. They're going to lie so as to make somebody happy. So it kind of gets a little bit further down the road. They tend to protect themselves, twist the truth. Typical behavior might be that if there's a conflict, they're just going to run. They're going to smooth things over. They'll shift the burden to somebody else. They rarely experience reconciliation because they're always minimizing the truth. Okay, guys, I've heard guys joke about this. It's not a good joke, but, the guys are like, here's all you need to know when you get married. Just say yes, dear. Yes, dear. Right? Some of you have heard this, or you've said it. Yes, dear. That's not healthy. Yes, dear. Right? Because there's not truth there. There's not working it out. That's one side of the equation. Again, how many of you think you fall somewhere on that continuum? Come on, raise your hand. Raise it really high. Who's in the more love side of things? All right? Let's go to the other side. Those that tend to overemphasize truth at the expense of love. These are what we call the defensive and aggressive responders. Defensive responders, their primary need is to be right. To be right. Their greatest fear is, being wrong. They're more interested in protecting themselves from blame than they are actually getting to the truth and pursuing understanding so that we can both grow. A defensive person very quickly will just kind of say, I this, or I didn't that, or it's not my fault, or they're feeling attacked. And they might be that way because, who knows, that's their personality. Maybe they were attacked a lot by a parent as a kid, and so they kind of always have their guard up. They'll promote themselves. They'll bend or ignore truth if they need. This is Adam in the garden, right? It's not my fault. She's the one that did it. All right. Again, typical behavior there is to blame others, maybe to excuse themselves. Aggressive responders, they're the bulldozers in the room. All right? Aggressive responders, their primary need is to be in control of the situation, to be in control of other people. And their greatest fear is failure. They need to win. So in conflict, they're going to empower themselves. They're going to try to control relationships. They might force truth. They can sometimes come across as attacking, maybe even shaming other people, suing other people. These, again, are the worst case scenarios. And their goal is perhaps to win. So let's review. Passive people. They wave a white flag. They turn a mountain into a molehill. They go that direction. Okay? Oh, it's not that bad. It's okay. Don't worry about it. And inside, lots going on. Evasive people, they move to Canada. All right? They covert operations is kind of their MO. They'll work the back room. They'll do some other stuff as well. Let's go back to our skit here. What was Gavin in the middle? Anybody want to guess where Gavin was? It's kind of passive or evasive, right? He's just agreeing with everybody to kind of get out of it. We actually don't know what he thinks, right? He probably thinks mom should get a cat. I don't know. Who knows? We'll never know what's going on there. The defensive person, they're all about self-protection and armor. There's kind of a shield there, probably because they've been hurt and don't want to be hurt again. And the aggressives, they're kind of shock and awe, right? I'm just going to kind of overwhelm them with what takes place. It's a little harder to see which the other two were, but some of the other things that weren't happening, they weren't talking to mom. They were talking to each other, the two they were starting to try to get allies, on their side of things. This is all sinful. This is all sinful behavior that we all do from time to time. Conflict gives us an opportunity for growth. Ephesians 4 gives us great opportunities for sin as well. We have to choose. So let me give you another illustration real quick before we move on. You go to a restaurant, you get the bill. It's $3 more than it's supposed to be because they charged you for the sweet potato fries. And you were sure that the sweet potato fries were included in the meal. What's the passive person going to do? Absolutely nothing, right? Yeah, they probably undercharged me the last time anyway, so I'm not going to say anything, okay? The evasive person, likewise, will probably not say anything. They may make up something. They might make up a lie in order to get their $3 back or something and feel like, well, at least we got to the right thing, but they didn't take a truthful path.
So the Canadian exchange rate is a little bit...
Yeah, there you go. Canadian exchange rate. Okay. So the defensives, they might say, hey, this isn't right. And they'll say, well, you ordered the sweet potato fries. And then they might defend, well, I didn't order the sweet potato fries. You didn't explain it quite this way. It's not my fault. What's the aggressive person going to do? They're going to call the manager. And they'll talk about poor customer service. They'll get the $3 taken off and a 10% coupon off their next meal at that point in time. Okay? None of these are necessarily wrong, but they can be. They can become sinful very quickly. So what's the solution? Growth comes when we don't like if you're passive, don't become more aggressive. That's not the goal. Don't sin in a different way. We need to be redemptive. That's the word I want you to come up. Am I being redemptive in conflict? Am I finding truth? Helping to understand what you see truth is, how I see the truth in a loving way that brings about growth for both of us. And like we talked about this morning, this is really hard because it takes more than one person to play in this game. We have to begin to see conflict as a healthy process for understanding ourselves. And I'm not great at this, I got to tell you. I tend to be more on the avoidant side of stuff. I can go into all the whys of that. I'm not going to do that. One of the things that I want to ask you, is friction a good thing or a bad thing? Talking physics here, friction. Let's put it in the context of a car. Is friction a good thing or a bad thing? If you're talking about the engine, you kind of in areas don't want friction. That's why you get your oil changed, right? Friction is going to grind everything to a halt. So friction can be a terrible thing. If you didn't have friction, though, your car wouldn't go nowhere, right? You want on the road with the tires, you want friction, because it's friction that propels you forward. And so what we need to understand with conflict is it's kind of friction. It just sort of depends. Sometimes you need to apply some oil so things don't break down. Sometimes you need to go, this friction is difficult, but it's what's going to propel me forward in growth. It's what's going to propel our relationship forward. And so again, I want to encourage you to get this profile. It's got a lot more helps. It takes you to a website that's going to guide you. Our time in terms of the teaching is rather limited. But our goal is to act redemptively by valuing both truth and love. And the Apostle Paul in Galatians, he kind of came on hard to them, and he says, have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth? In other words, he was getting flack, like, man, you're hard on us. It's like, you need to hear the truth. In 2 Corinthians, in the first letter to the Corinthians, he came on pretty hard. In the second letter to Corinthians, he says, you know what, the punishment that was afflicted on this person I told you before, it's enough. Back off. It's time to restore them. A little oil is necessary now. He was truthing in love. So at the end of the day, what we're seeking is what is best for the relationship. So what we want to do next, let me check where I'm at. Oh, good. I actually breezed right through that. Is some time for table questions. So team leaders or table leaders, you I think have about 3 questions. Can I just see yours real quick, Holly? So it says, after the talk, again, you don't have to speak at your table, but here's what we want to work through. When you are on conflict, you tend to overemphasize truth or love. Try to give some examples. Tell the truth. Tell how it gets you in trouble. Okay. How does your bent create problems? Second, when you're in a disagreement with someone, what do you most want from the other person? Let's be honest. What are we looking for? What would help us most in disagreement? And finally, again, if you have time, how do you know when a conflict's resolved anyway? How do you know when we've kind of reached a next level step of growth? All right? You've got about 15 minutes to take on answering questions. So remember, our goal in conflict is what? What's our goal in conflict according to Ephesians 4? And get our own way, exactly. No, it's growth, right? It's growth. And growth comes by speaking the truth in love. It's about speaking the truth in love. So that's kind of the progress that we need to do. There's a couple things. When you're in an argument with somebody, there's you, and you can worry about you. Am I going to, come out okay? Either am I going to win or am I going to be safe? You're worried about them, or what terrible things are they doing in this conflict. But then there's a third thing called the relationship. So there's me, you, and then there's the relationship. And that's the other thing you have to be thinking about is that being damaged? Is it healthy? What do we do? Because that's what we want to continue. This moment of argument, that'll pass. The relationship is the key thing, okay? And that's what needs to be nurtured and carried on. So we've got 4 panelists, and Norm's going to take over and introduce them, and here we go.
Thank you much, Scott. Okay, so conflict, it comes in all shapes and sizes. Let's get spicy here a little bit tonight. Danny, you are a recent high school graduate. You're a college student. What does conflict look like for you? In what ways does conflict manifest in your life?
This is off the questions, I feel like. It comes in different ways. I'm a pretty conflict-oriented person. I like conflict. I like confrontation. I do. I was raised in a home as...
You're a truth teller.
I am a truth teller, but I try to do it with love as much as possible, and I think that's what I learned at home. But I also learned that in my home, it was always like if you had a conflict, you didn't go to bed with that conflict. We always... Right before bed, we would all sit around and we would make sure that we were all okay with each other, and that's how it kind of. Even if we weren't okay, we did always end up okay because it was like me and my sister arguing over a chip, which did happen, and so. In my life now, though, I'm in early college here, so I've stayed home. So, honestly, it's been more with my family than anything because I'm still at home. But I think that's where the conflict kind of stays. But I think it's just made me and my parents' relationship grow even more, and even with my siblings because they all live in different states. So I think that's where it's kind of oriented, but even at work, I can find myself, Landon can, so we work together, but I think...
Oh, do we need to separate you two up here? Okay.
No,
Great.
But I've just always been able for myself to stand what I think is right, and I think that can come off a little too much, but yeah.
A little strong. What about you, Landon? How you're also recently graduated and in college, and you have some siblings, just like Danny does. What does conflict look like for you? What kinds of things happen?
Yeah. So this is pretty interesting to me because for a period of time after high school, for 2 years after high school, I went out of state for school, and then I came back, and I'm back at home with family again, which definitely does bring up conflict. And I think it's interesting because I have way less conflict with my parents than I did in high school, which makes sense because I'm an adult now. But I find it interesting that I now, when I'm out of the house, after coming back home, I've had more conflict with my older sister who is also out of the house. And I think that's part of that is when we get together, it's okay, there are some weird dynamics of I never had any problems with my older sister in high school, but now that we're in completely different places, it's how do we approach I guess having independence and then giving that up when we're together. But so I guess coming back to the question is I think I see it manifest more with my family, but in different situations with my family.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's go to John. He's a pastor. Pastors don't have conflict, so it's so easy, right? I know Chris Rasper's in here tonight too, so being a pastor, there's no conflict. Or father, husband, what do your conflicts look like that you face in your life?
Yeah, so as a pastor, it's usually the conflict that I find is maybe a misunderstanding or somebody failed to communicate, and so somebody gets their feelings hurt, and you just got to go in and talk to them. Or you have people, sometimes, I know this is hard to believe, but some people want to control the pastor or the church. And you get those guys who are just kind of hard-willed, those aggressive type guys, and there's a little conflict there, and you got to be willing to stand up to that. As a father, we have teenagers now. So, and we used to live way out in the country before we came here. Nobody had jobs or cars. It was just kind of our own little utopia. And then we got here, and my kids.
It is utopia up here, isn't it?
Yeah, but now they want to go places, and they have all these friends now, and so there's conflict there, just in their freedom, which we've encouraged and we want to see happen, but it introduces conflict because I don't like all your friends, and I don't like when you're gone that long, and I don't know why, and stuff like that. And then as a husband, after she gave me that second black eye, we just don't have any more conflict.
You saying Jenny's feisty?
She's over there, yeah. No, we really got all that out in the first couple years, and now our conflict is more like, if she calls me dude or I call her dude, then we know the line is there, and we just stop.
That's a good way to do that. We also have a mother and a wife and a professional conflict solver up here, a counselor. Give her a hand, Allison. Yeah. So what does conflict look like for you in your personal, and if you can share in your other contexts?
Yeah, so I agree with some of what you were sharing. Like, parenting can be conflict-oriented. We have 5 teenagers under our realm in general care right now. And I definitely lean more towards the love side and how I interact. And so for me, that conflict can come up as like, I really want to be the yes man because I don't want to create conflict. Like, I don't want to have there be friction. And so I am more inclined to want to just go along with it, make it all okay, and smooth everything over and whatever. But that's not always the right answer. So I feel that conflict in me a lot, having to say no to things or having to navigate through those things with teenagers. And even when they were younger, it just looked different. And then I think, so it's been interesting trying to meld those two now in my practice, because I do deal with conflict for a living in a lot of ways, and whether that's marriage relationships or parent-child relationships or whatever. I will say I like dealing with other people's conflicts much more than my own, so that's helpful. But it has caused me to really reflect how I handle conflict, I think, a little bit more. And I was telling my table, I think I've been really convicted about this more in recent years of really finding that balance in truth and love, and knowing that I do tend to err one way than the other. But holding that intention with sitting in the room with somebody when it can be really heated. And so trying to hear out both sides and also bring some peace into the room can be a challenge.
Well, would anybody be willing to share how you did just a moment ago, but how you guys respond to conflict? And then I'm going to ask a second one. How do you like it, the way people respond to you when you're in conflict? But let's just start with this. Who would share? There's conflict. What's your natural way of, we've got some hints here. I know Danny's going to zip fastballs, right? Like, that's what my wife does. She throws the chin music, we call it. Do you guys know what chin music is? Raise your hand if you know what chin music is. That means get off my plate or wash the plates or something. Anybody want to share?
I will. I don't care. What was there's aggressive.
How do you, go ahead. Yep.
What's the other one?
Passive and aggressive.
No, on the truth side. Defensive.
Defensive.
Yeah, I probably fall somewhere close to the passive and defensive, a mixture of the two, I think. And so the first question is, how do we do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably my first reaction, just like most core, is to stay away from it. I'm not like you, I don't want to fight. So yeah, I try to avoid conflict when I can, which doesn't always serve me well. It's better to know when to do that.
when you're in conflict with someone, how do you want them to kind of engage you?
Communicate
Okay.
and do it with respect. Yeah. And if you do that, I mean, I can't see us ever having problems, you know.
Yeah. Who else would like to share? Do you think, Landon, how do you like your sister to respond to you when you're in conflict? Let's just go right after it.
Yeah, so I think how I respond to conflict depends on my relationship with who I'm having conflict with. I think when it's with my family, I like to get it out there like as soon as possible because, like Danny kind of said, like going to sleep, like if I'm mad at my brother, I'm not going to go to sleep about that. I'm going to talk to him about it. And a lot of times I could handle that in a much better way than I do. But I think if it's in a less personal relationship, I tend to be more conflict avoidant and I like to lay down and take it because I'm not gonna like if I don't know you, I'm not gonna come at your throat. Like that doesn't make sense to me. But I think when I'm in conflict with someone who's more personal, and even when not, like communication is huge for me. Like not raising your voice is huge to me because I don't feel like if I'm like having a conversation with you, I don't want either of us to be shouting. It doesn't help anything. Yeah. And I guess like a third thing would just be if we like at the end of the day, if we can like recognize the similarities that we have over the conflict that we have with each other.
I hear a common thread, being treated with dignity and respect and kindness, just what Jesus would have us do as we're, conversing with people as we're in conflict. Very, very good. Danny, do you have anything to add?
So I definitely agree with Landon. I think it's dependent on who I'm having a confrontation with or who I'm talking with. But I also have learned about myself is that my face can often say something that I'm not actually meaning. Like I just know that I probably have so much attitude on my face, but like my heart isn't there. And I think that's like what I'm like challenging with as a person. But for me, it's just coming up to it. If it's someone I love, I just want us to be on the same page, but I also know that my brain's like going 100 miles an hour and I'm just going to be spitfiring everything that's like in my brain. And I've had confrontations with people and they're like, I just need a second to think about it. I'm like, no, tell me what you're thinking. And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, no, tell me what you're thinking. And I think that's what can be hard for me. But I think in the end, what's important to me, I said this in my table, is that I just want to be heard. And like, you don't have to agree with me, but I just hope that you understand where I'm coming from and know me as a person and like what I'm trying to say.
That's really good. What do you have to share, Allison?
Yeah, so I think I learned about myself that because I grew up in a home that was pretty conflict avoidant, it took me a while to figure out how to handle conflict in relationships as an adult. And like when we were early married, it looked like my husband might bring something up to me and I would dissolve into tears and I felt guilty or I felt embarrassed or whatever. And then we would stop and we would walk away because he didn't know what to do with my tears and I was overwhelmed and that was it. And we were like, okay, this isn't working. We're not getting anything resolved. And so, for me, it got to the point where I was like, you can push through the tears. Like, it's okay. They're going to be there, but it's all right. Just keep pushing them because we got to figure it out. So what I really needed, though, in that, I think, was just somebody to be patient with me as I was learning and figuring it out. And also, it goes back to what everybody else says. I think we all want to be heard, right? We want our perspective to be heard and to be taken in. And that's the reality of conflict is we're both looking to be heard. So.
There's an old 80s song, I think, I don't know who did it, but it's like, I get so emotional, baby. You know that song? Yeah, that's I won't sing it anymore, I promise. But, advice for, what I'm hearing you say, Allison, is just be patient through that. Because it's like emotions and it's like, run away. Would that be your advice for those that you're in conflict and maybe there's marriages here or relationships between siblings or what have you, or a roommate situation where the other one, they're very emotive and it's like, what do you do?
Yeah, I think there still has to come a point in time where you're working through and bringing some resolution to conflict. So whether you're a high emotional person or not, and maybe you need to take a break and come back to it or whatever it is, but yeah, sometimes you just gotta be willing to push through.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's the best advice you guys have for us on handling conflict. Maybe it was something Scott said, maybe it's something that you're bringing here, but give us some advice, like what, from your perspective, from your place in this world, what do you say? What helps you get through the conflict that you face?
So, two things that my wife and I came up with together early in our marriage that helped us with conflict, and it's useful for more than just your marriage. Just two phrases. One is, there's no trophy in this. And we learned that when one of us says that means this fight's over. I'm not going to fight you if I don't get something for it. And that's, I mean, be honest, can you even think of the last 3 fights you had, what they were about? Probably can't. It's not worth it. So there's no trophy in this. And then the other thing that we came up with was we just need to reset to zero. Because you're mad that I did this, but I'm mad because you did that to cause me to do that. But then you did, and it's just this, okay, we're done. Reset to zero. We're even. And then you don't have to fight about it.
I thought one was going to be dude.
Dude.
Dude. I like that. There's no trophy in this. I like that.
Pick your battles and then just be quick to forgive. Don't hold those. Love keeps no record of wrongs. Don't keep it.
It's not going to be in the Petoskey News Review that you won that battle. Nope. There's another way. Okay. That's excellent.
I think like one thing that I've heard, and I can't remember who I heard it from, but it's like during the conflict, just approach it from a place of love and remember the things that you love about the person who you're having that conflict with. And so for me, like when I really like to come at conflict, like at a really hard and fast stance, it like slows me down and lets me realize that like this person in front of me is loved just as much by God, and I should try to love them the same way.
Good. Thank you.
I kind of have 2 answers from this. One of them is actually a verse we talked about a couple weeks ago, and it's just quick to listen and then slow to speak and slow to anger. But quick to listen, me and my dad had this conversation. It's quick to listen to the other person, but it's also quick to listen to God and what he has to say to you during that argument. Because if you're just going to be like, okay, I hear you, but this is like, think about what God is trying to give in it during this conversation, because I'm guessing the other person needs to hear it. And another thing is, I forgot, but I had another thing.
It was important.
It was a good thing, but I forgot. Also, so I grew up with, my dad's a counselor, and I often heard like, you don't know what the other person is going through. You don't know their lifestyle. I had a situation where I got in an argument, not an argument, she just came up to me and said something to me, and I was like, why would she ever say that? Like, and I was like defensive. But then I learned, I see her a lot, so I continued to learn more about her. I'm like, she was just coming out of love, and I didn't know what she went through, and I learned more about her and about her background. I'm like, she was just doing it out of consideration for me. And I think if you try to think of that person's background and just be like, why do you think they brought it up to me? So I think that has helped me a lot in conflicts too.
That's really good. We can get into going back to the trophy thing a little bit, like it's a competition to win, but what if we kind of rewired our brain to think the competition is really understanding them instead of me winning my battle, like really listening, and, you don't have to accept everything that they say, but you can receive them as a sister, brother, neighbor, coworker, whatever. I want to embrace them. I want to understand them better. And so lean into that instead of leaning into winning the battle. What about you, Allison? Do you have anything to add to any of this?
Yeah, so along the same lines of that, I think when we had gone to a marriage conference early on in our marriage, the one thing they had us do is like turn and look at each other and say, you are not my enemy. And that is one that has come up several times since.
Do you ever practice that now?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a few years, but yeah, we have literally turned to each other in the middle of a fight, more my husband than me.
Everybody do that right now. Turn to somebody and say, you are not my enemy. Just try it. See how it works. You are not my enemy.
You're not my enemy.
I think
Doesn't that feel good?
It's just important to remember, because sometimes it feels like it in that moment, right? Like it feels like you are my enemy and my goal is to win here. But really, when you're in relationship with somebody, it's not a win if I leave feeling like my point has been heard and yours hasn't been. Or if I feel like, yeah, I got my way and you didn't, or whatever. That's not a win. And so I think to remember that we're on the same team here. We're fighting for the same things, and we may go about it different ways, but I think it's important to remember how, we're working together towards this. just allowing both perspectives to be represented and heard.
Like we get a trophy together. Nobody gets one, we get one together, kind of a thing. If we can resolve it. That's right. The whole listening to understand, that's huge for me in conflict resolution. The other one I wanted to share for advice is, this is Proverbs 15:1. Some of you have memorized this. If you haven't, memorize it. But a soft answer does what? It turns away wrath. But what does harsh words do? It stirs up anger. It makes it worse. And quite honestly, there's times when I get fired up and it just makes it worse. So if that's something I pray about often, I have it in my prayer journal to pray about having a very, calming response to someone that might challenge me. Or it's not Brenda. You don't have to think it's always Brenda that's challenging me. No. But a soft answer turns away wrath. But those harsh words, they stir up anger. Do we have any more time, or are we done with this part? You got 2 more minutes? Okay. Who would share, when was a time when you had a conflict and something good, really good, came out of it? Anybody have an example? John, go for it.
So when I was young man, 19 or 20, I was an intern at this church, and I worked for this guy who was definitely on the aggressive side. He was truth all the way. And he called me into his office one day, and we were getting ready for a backyards Bible club kind of thing, and we were supposed to have all these games and food. And he said, "So are you ready for it?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm ready. I got everything I need." And he said, "You've got a ladle to serve the cheese sauce?" No. "Have you got stuff to flip the burgers?" No. "Have you got plates?" No. And he just kind of started ranting at me like, "You are not even close to ready." And that wasn't a very good way for him to handle it, but I have not forgotten the ladle for the cheese sauce ever since.
Woo!
I actually I told that story to Scott when he was asking me before we came up here, before we were hired. He said, "Can you do administrative stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, I know exactly where the cheese ladle is."
Cheese sauce ladle is. Anybody else have one?
No, I was gonna say, this is less, I guess, with me directly, but in my practice recently, I've been meeting with a mother and daughter who haven't really talked. They used to be really close, and they hadn't really talked in a year because there was a conflict. And, you talking about listening for understanding, the first thing we ended up doing was just having them sit, and I'm like, I just want to hear, what have been your hurts? What have been your hurts in this relationship over the past year? And they went back and forth and shared them, but I asked them to just listen and not respond and not defend, and that was really hard at first. But I thought we were going to get to the end of that, and I told I'll give you time, and once we're all done, and it took a couple of weeks, but not consistently. I met for 1 hour, a couple of weeks, but I was amazed when we came back around to the end of that, and I said, now's your chance. If there's anything that you feel like you need to say, to bring back up, to explain, whatever else. And there really was very little to cover because they had taken the time to really take in what the other person was saying and listen just to hear and understand. And it brought so much clarity for them about misconceptions of what had actually happened that there was not much to go back over after that. And I was just grateful for that example because I was like, that's such a great example of how so often it's a misperception or a misunderstanding or whatever, and when we're really listening truly to tune in and understand where the other person is coming from and be quick to ask for forgiveness, which they did, it brings about a lot of resolution.
That's wonderful. Come on up, Scott. In my experience, it's like the Band-Aid thing, tear it off or let it wait. What do? You just, instead of do it really slowly, right? And it's the same thing with conflict. It's appropriately deal with it. Don't let it fester. Don't let it continue on and on and on, because it's pay me now or pay me later. And I'd rather, deal with it now. Scott, it's up to you.
All right, thank you for our panel. Let's give them a thank you. So we've learned a number of things. One of the things I want you to do right now, and I'm going to wrap us up with a few thoughts, but I want you to go back to your table, and you should have one more question on your sheet. Somebody tell me what it is, because I don't have the sheet in front of me. It's at the bottom. Okay. How can you personally respond to conflict more redemptively? So this is important, right? Maybe you're a passive person. The passive person's a punching bag. They stand there and take it. The evasive person dodges and runs. The defensive person picks up a shield and, I'm not going to let you in. And the aggressive person picks up the sword and they're going to go the other way. The redemptive person, though, what did they do? We learned a lot of it. They're quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. They're truthing in love. I like to get rid of the word even speaking truth because that's an add-on. They're truthing in love. It's not about speaking. Truthing sometimes means listening. Let me hear what you think is happening here. Okay, that's part of what truthing is so that we can grow. So do a little application. You've heard a lot of things. Start sharing as a table personally. What's one thing that maybe you need to do if you're going to grow in conflict? A couple of things as you're wrapping it up, some resources I want to recommend. If you're one of the people that seems to get walked on all the time, you're maybe the passive person or evasive person. We mentioned this book a little while ago, Boundaries by Henry Cloud. I'd recommend you take a look at that and learn how to establish boundaries. Another excellent book, and it goes under two titles. One of them is called 5 Languages of Apology. It's written, co-authored by Gary Smalley, who did the 5 love languages. Also goes under the title of When I'm Sorry Is Not Enough. Either one of those 5 love languages. Gary Chapman, what did I say? Oh, Gary Chapman, sorry. And so, yes, Gary Chapman, great book. We speak different apology languages. Just say I'm sorry isn't enough. For one person, hey, it's my fault. That's what I need to hear. I just it's my fault. Okay, mea culpa, I'm good. For someone else, it might be, hey, I realize I really hurt you. Like you have to acknowledge the hurt. And there's just a couple of really helpful. I want to encourage that. A couple of things to review. A statement that's always been helpful to me is you cannot know yourself by yourself. You cannot know yourself by yourself. If you don't want to sin in conflict, go live in a cabin in the woods somewhere. You will never sin in conflict because you won't have any. Okay? So conflict is not just about what the issue is, it's about learning about yourself. There's this friction that hopefully will wear down some rough edges because you're learning not just about them, but you're learning about yourself. We learned again about delivery system and content. I think that one's really important. That person who's kind of giving it to you, maybe the content's actually something you need to hear. Their delivery system is horrible, just horrible. But pause for a second and say, is there truth in here? I had a guy 20-some years ago. We got along most of the time quite well. And he said to me, Scott, you know what your problem is? Okay, like right there. Where are we at with delivery system? Okay? Terrible start. And he's saying, Scott, you know what your problem is? You want to be liked. I'm like, well, doesn't everybody want to be liked, But boy, I chewed on that for a long time. I was kind of really irritated by how he delivered that, I got to tell you. But the more I thought about it at that stage of my life, I was trying too much to, be liked in the process. And I was cheating content myself in terms of truth and needing to grow in that. So the passage I think that Danny mentioned from James 1, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Right? This is part of truthing in love. That's our goal. So the last thing, we've kind of joked about, are you a truth teller or are you a grace giver? Even when we label ourselves that, what we're doing is we're taking that part of ourselves that's good and we're camping on that. I'm a truth teller. Maybe what we need to say is, I really suck at love, at the delivery system. Or, well, I'm one of the grace givers. I'm all about grace. Maybe you cheat truth all the time. So own the other side of the equation a little bit. And then begin asking yourself, okay, how do I become redemptive? How do I grow the relationship? How do I bring the grace of Jesus Christ to bear? Because then there's transformation, there's growth for them, there's growth for me, and that third thing called the relationship that exists between us, the bridge. The condition of the bridge matters. And now there's hope for the bridge that's between the two of us. And I need to attend to that as well. So thank you, everybody. Our time is up for this evening. I'm trying to think if there's any last things. We do have Man Up this Wednesday night. So guys, if you liked the pizza, there'll be more on Wednesday. If you didn't get enough, come back on Wednesday. So let me close us in prayer and we'll let you go. Father God, thank you that you made peace with us. And you came to make peace with us so that among Jew and Gentile and other differences, we would make peace with one another. So Lord, teach us to be peacemakers, not peace fakers, not people who force truth, but people who make peace. Help us to go in that spirit. In Jesus' name, amen.